Welcome to Mailbag. This is a series of videos about questions that you guys have left on the channel. I normally block them up into a series that I can record in an evening because that's how many questions you guys leave. So what you'll be seeing is this block header, and then you'll see the individual mailbag items that will follow as the next part of the video. But before we get into mailbag, which is about questions and answers and comments you guys leave on the channel, we must do the channel parish notices. And if you like videos about legacy tech, musical instruments, EDM, anything like that, hit the subscribe icon, because that's what this channel's all about. If you want to be notified when such videos hit the channel, it's the bell icon. Save yourself some time, hit both together. If you like the contents of the video, please give it a thumbs up. And also, I love you guys leaving comments on the videos down below. I read them, I comment on them, and sometimes you even give me ideas for future videos, which is really great stuff. It also allows other people to comment on something you've raised against a topic that was discussed in the video. Really, really good stuff. Also down there, Facebook and Instagram. Becoming more and more popular with you guys. A lot more of you are talking to me on those channels. Keep it up. It's probably the channel I'll respond to you most quickly on, because it's the channel in my pocket, as in it's on my phone. But please follow me on those particular platforms, and you'll see the normal channel shenanigans. And finally, down there is the important one. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you can support the good work that this channel does towards EDM and legacy synthesizers. And now back to this video. Okay, next one comes from Leading Motive, and it's in response to how to get the D110 into demo mode. Yeah, and what Leading has said is why the cards are not compatible is quite logical, because I made the point that you can't use cards from the D series on the U series and on the D70. Anyway, it comes back. The D70 is actually a U series synth, like the U110, 220 and 20 and MV30. These are purely sample based, and therefore accept the SNU 110 cards, which contain the samples, this is true. Okay, the D10, the D20 and the D220 series are synths, and their PND10 cards contain patch data only. The same you could store in the memory, not samples. The D50 and 550 is a completely different machine and not compatible with any of the above. And I kind of know that. Now, what I wrote back was, thanks for the information. My point wasn't necessarily the format of the cards and the technical reason why they can't be used, but the various synths in the D range. So you can use the same card on the D10, D20 and D220, but you can't use it on the D50, the D550 or the D70. And yet they were all meant to be the D range. Okay, that was kind of what the point was. The fact that the different instruments in the range were supported to different levels by Roland, despite the fact that the D5, the D10, the D20, the D110 are based on LA synthesis, the same way as, which is the same engine that generates the sounds on the D50 and D550. That was my point. And as you and many others have pointed out, the D70 is really an upgrade of the U20. And if you look at the board actually has stamped on it U50, which just gives you the whole point that this was meant to be a Roppler, and Roland quickly moved it into a synthesizer D range because of I think it was the M1, yeah. And you know, I'd go back to that point in time. So at that point in time, a friend of mine was really looking at the D70, and he went to the shop. This was Project Music in Hounslow in London. We went to the shop to buy a D70 and walked out with a W30. And the reason why was because the W30 had more support from Roland in terms of the sound libraries and what it could do than the D70 could. So D70 was meant to be this flagship synth, and it really wasn't as capable as the W30, which is why my friend bought the W30, and I think it was cheaper as well, than he did the D70. The D70, I mean, to be honest, the D70 is a cracking synth, and it also is a cracking MIDI controller, and that's what I've used it for over the years, really, because it does allow you to zone the keyboard and send out MIDI on different channels. Brilliant from that perspective. Anyway, I digress. The true D series is the D10, the D20, etc. These were truly compatible in terms of the generation and exchangeability of patches. Between those synths, ignoring the sequence data on the D20, the patches were interchangeable, and that was really good at that point. Now, Leading has written back here and said, true, the WS sampler series supported levels much better as they could be fed with cheap floppy disks. The D series patches would be distributed via RAM cards, ROM cards and disks, whereas making dedicated sample ROMs for the U series must have been costly, plus the latter cards were not downward compatible with the earlier models, U110, U20, U220, 20, MV30, so D70, MV30 downward. It was all just a mess, to be honest. They really cocked up. And I think the biggest cock up I've always said was between the D20, the D10, and the D50. It was the same synthesis generation model. The D50 was far more complicated in terms of the number of parameters you could change to manipulate the sound. The D20 and the D10 were rather, and the D220 were rather simple from that perspective. But why call them the same range of synths? And I've said the same thing with the SY range of synths. You got a bunch of synthesizers from Yamaha called SY this, SY that, and in effect, the only ones that are compatible with each other is the 77 and the 99. And even that's a bit tenuous. I know of at least one of the U series cars that will not work on the D70. I do know that. Because of some way the D70 interprets it, but to be honest, I can't remember which one it is. I always remember when I put the card in and go, oh, it doesn't work in this. Anyway, there you go. Hope that answers the question. I'm not sure how many more of these I can do this evening. I can feel my voice getting hoarse, so it might be one or two more, and I'll have to carry on another day. This is just indicative of the number of questions and comments you guys leave on the channel that are worth sharing. Anyway, the next question or comment comes from Ginrich Piano Studio, and I haven't written what video this is in response to. Bad me. I do this occasionally. And he writes, I just tried switching black and red wires, and it doesn't seem to work for me. Still works exactly the same as it did before. I know exactly what video this was. This was my DP-10 video about changing the polarity. And before anybody shouts at me, I have to turn around and say, I got it wrong. Okay, so that's the reason why this is in the mailbag. I got it wrong. Even though what I said was technically correct, because it does change the polarity, it doesn't actually do anything. So it doesn't, because of the, how do I explain this? So in the DP5 and 6, there was a 3-pole switch in the DP5 and 6 that allowed you to swap the tip and the sleeve. Okay, so you could swap them across, and it actually did change the polarity because of this 3-pole switch. However, the DP-10 doesn't have the same switch. It has a 2-pole switch that does something slightly different. So therefore, when you get to the point where you are actually talking about changing the polarity, if you swap the wires across, it doesn't do anything. And I have to apologise and say I got it wrong. I pulled the video from the channel because it was giving wrong information. So I do apologise, Ginrich. I just got it wrong.